Welcome, everyone, to the Digital Leader Show, where we talk key issues and news at the intersection of business and technology in hopes of making you a better digital leader. We're live Wednesdays at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the audio recording is available the following week wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Dan Goodstein. I head up IRPA AI. We're a professional association, media, and peer-to-peer research network providing education, networking, and advice to over 130,000 members globally on automation, enterprise AI, and digital transformation. Today, we're discussing U.S. Executive Order 14179. Is it unshackling AI or unleashing chaos? Plus headlines for digital leaders from the world of enterprise technology. Thanks to our sponsor, Oracle NetSuite. If you feel like you've outgrown your current ERP, or maybe you're still on QuickBooks, or your organization is scaling very quickly, we recommend Oracle NetSuite. Their cloud ERP helps provide real-time visibility into operational and financial performance. And our followers can get preferred pricing of up to 45% off. Just go to irpaai.com/NetSuite for more information. Please welcome my co-host. It's Chris Surdak. He's a senior analyst for IRPA AI. He's former White House Chief Transformation Office Advisor, Digital Transformation Head at Gartner, and AI Automation Practice Lead at EY. He's also an award-winning author, having written 3 books, The Care and Feeding of Bots, Data Crush, and Jerk, the 12 Steps to Rule the World. Chris, how are you, buddy?
Good. You forgot that I've also won some awards for chili cook-offs, so...
Listen, if your bio is any longer, we'd have to extend the show by a half an hour. But
someday I'll have to get good at something, I guess.
There you go. Jack of all trades, but you're a master of a few. I think, jumping right into headlines this week, Chris, busy week as always. But I think that the top story for me was this Informatica deal. So Salesforce is planning to buy Informatica. It's an $8 billion deal all around, the software giants, growing pressure to increase adoption of Agentforce, its agentic AI offering. So just when you thought maybe the AI investor market was dead, guess again, right?
Well, and it's a shift that I've expected that we would see, and I think you're going to see even more of a shift this way. It's that old saying from, I forget the famous old book about sailors, but saying, water everywhere, not a drop to drink. This is AI everywhere and no data left to train on. And so I think, and you and I have been talking about this for well over a year. The shift to recognizing that AI is really a data story, not a technology story, I think is manifesting. We're at the point where I've seen some numbers, like a third of the training data that's being used to train updated models is AI generated, which is astonishing. I mean, this is Idiocracy, the movie, playing out in front of us. Because if we have some degree of errors, which we inherently do in the AI training data, and we're using AI to make the training data, it's going to amplify the negative impacts. So I think what a lot of people are recognizing is any platforms that can source original human-generated data is going to be the new gold. Which, by the way, as you know, is a theme of my book from 12 years ago, right? Yeah. So it's all coming to fruition.
NVIDIA, the bellwether of the AI space, has reclaimed its crown as the most valuable company on earth based on yesterday's close market cap of $3.45 trillion. The stock is up 45% over its April low. And according to the quarterly results that just came out, revenue up 69%, signaling to most of us that spending on AI shows no sign of slowing down.
Well, and as you have the screen up there, I want to see the one, the SpaceX engineer raises $300 million. That one sounds interesting to me. But NVIDIA, I think this is a little bit of purchasing department inertia. There were so many commitments, certainly around the Trump taking office, of we're going to roll out all these data centers and we're going to invest all this money. So to me, this revenue bump that they're getting generates the valuation bump that we're getting, and that's again the 6 to 9 month purchasing cycle from your purchasing departments kind of catching up. people are going headlong into building more and more capacity, and more power to them. But between building more capacity for the compute and better algorithms, I'll bet on the Salesforce Informatica invest in the data side every time, because the data, no matter how many chips we make, the data is going to be the thing that determines the success of these things over time. I'm pretty convinced of that.
Yeah, and speaking about capacity, Facebook or Meta has just announced a 20-year deal to buy power from an Illinois nuclear power plant as demands for its AI offerings soar, according to Bloomberg. They'll start receiving power about middle of 2027. And this is, we heard rumblings about nuclear power late last year, as a lot of these AI announcements were coming out from all the big tech companies. But this might be the first official one that I know about, unless there's one.
And further in the article, they talk about how they're trying to reopen 3 Mile Island for Microsoft. When I was 17 years old, I went to 3 Mile Island on a field trip from my high school, and we visited the control center. And I was at a conference this weekend, and I was talking about the failure of 3 Mile Island and how that teaches us how to better manage technology. So I find it deeply ironic that not only are we reopening, nuclear power plants, we're reopening one of the most notorious nuclear power plants that's ever existed. Maybe we should be a little bit worried about how much electricity this stuff consumes. Just saying. And if I may, so in America, we're restarting 80-year-old nuclear power plants that have already failed once, whereas in China and India, they're deeply investing in, I don't know if you're familiar with lifters or molten salt nuclear reactors, which is a technology that we in the US invented back in the 50s and 60s, and we tossed it aside. And it proved to be absolutely game changing, but we dumped it in exchange for fast reactors slow reactors like you see with 3 Mile Island. Whereas the Indians and Chinese are moving forward with lifter technology, and it's potentially five or six generations more advanced. So it's interesting where we choose to spend our money, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we've got kind of a couple of different angles here this week, right? Of just headlines. The data stuff we talked about, the capacity and compute, the power, and the other one, which is just completely in the crosshairs every week. No surprise, but I think that it's more than just hype. Is the job situation as it relates to AI. I mean, if you look just in the last 2 days, such an interesting smattering of headlines about jobs. The first one was that companies hired the fewest workers in 2 years last month. Private sector payrolls are up only 37,000, according to ADP. Which bases findings on 25 million employees. The people who change jobs are seeing a 7% increase in the new positions. Those that stay are seeing only a 4% increase. But then you see this other headline: the world's gained 600,000 more millionaires last year, according to Capgemini. And the unemployment rate amongst recent college graduates, according to the New York Times, is up to 6%. And they're just more of these kind of conflicting headlines. Job openings are up, but so are layoffs, right? We've talked about the disconnect between available talent and available jobs. So just I guess turbulence, if I had to sum it all up, right, Chris?
Massive turbulence. The old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. But as a data guy and a numbers guy and analytics guy, that number of only 37,000 new jobs, there's so much you could unpack in that. You have the bulk of the boomer generation, the largest generation America's ever had, is now, no kidding, starting to retire. So you already have an erosion there. basically the substantial decrease in immigration over the last several months, that has an impact on new payroll entry and so forth. And then I'm outside of LA, and I saw a report about 3 weeks ago from the CEO of the Port of Los Angeles, which carries about a third of all trade between China and the United States, saying we ain't got no more ships. No one's coming in. The stuff's and I can see it in the local train stations where they stockpile the containers. They're stockpiled high because there's no need for them to go back to China to get refilled. So an across the board economic slowdown, I think, is we're clearly in the middle of it. But you and I have also talked about with new hires coming out of college, the way this AI stuff seems to be working is it either wipes out the most commoditized type jobs, help desk and things like that, answering phones, or it's really good as a research assistant for someone who's already got a lot of expertise. Well, that's wonderful for your most talented people, but we've annihilated the pipeline of people maturing in their career, right? So the old way
level positions, right? Those
entry level, licking the boss's boots and getting him coffee and learning how to do the job, that's all going away, and people are going to see a lot of cost savings potentially in the near term, but in the long term, who's going to pick up the ball and run with it? And then there's also, I think, more and more people, and I've wrote about this recently, we're getting this massive Dunning-Kruger effect. Like, this is an industrialized Dunning-Kruger where someone will go up to ChatGPT and ask a couple of questions, and then all of a sudden they believe it and think that they're an expert. And they have no notion of whether or not they're actually getting a legitimate answer. And so, massive Dunning-Kruger. It's going to be very interesting. So I'm going to steal a few minutes of your sunshine here. I am finally working on my next book, and it's really about this cybernetic organization and what's it going to look like 10 years from now? How are we going to blend with the technology and get a positive outcome instead of the movie The Terminator? Not entirely convinced we're going to get there, but what does that look like? And so, like I said, I'll steal a little of your thunder and let people know that that's going to be coming out hopefully pretty soon. There's also a crypto angle to it, and it's as you say, there's a lot of turbulence around there. So I'm trying to kind of figure out which way the life raft's going to go.
Well, and there's some disconnects, and I think in this kind of binary headline generated social media clickbait algorithm world that we live in, some of these things get oversimplified. But like just in this one report from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics that came out yesterday, available positions increased to 7.39 million, the highest it's been in almost a year. But involuntary separations also reached their highest level since October. They're saying it's taking Americans longer to find new jobs. And another separate report came out and said that there's 130 job recruiting platform reported 134% job application increases since the release of ChatGPT. You're seeing Disney came out this week and said they're laying off another few hundred employees in the entertainment division. McKinsey came out and said that they're this is the people business, right? Consultants, they're turning to AI for a bunch of, to your point, right, the tasks that probably the more junior advisors, consultants would have done, things like putting together decks and PowerPoints and proposals. Boston Consulting Group, supposedly AI services already account for 20% of their revenue. So what's going to happen to that workforce, right? It's certainly not going to stay the same. I don't think it's alarmist at this point to say there's a disconnect between what these companies need and the workforce that's out there, and the fact that they're just not going to need the same numbers in the workforce.
The first 15 years of consulting, I was pumping out Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoints and everything you just said. So yeah. And if I'm any good at this now, it's from that base that was built. So you really,
that's the other part, right? Yeah.
Yeah. How do we develop people in the future? What is the meaning of expertise in the future? It's going to be interesting. And to the resume thing, I don't know if you've seen them on TikTok, but there's people with these TikTok videos where someone will set up a chat GPT to just say, go on LinkedIn and search every single job that I could possibly be a match for, and just send a resume. And they literally show on TikTok, they're just sending out hundreds and hundreds of resumes a day. So that's the supply side. Now the demand side, there's also a lot of discussion where companies are just posting up all kinds of fake stuff just to farm for resumes and farm CVs and farm, again, more personal data. So, the degree of fakeness in the job market is arguably getting as bad as the dating market. And I think it's probably because it's the same algorithms.
And it's not just, data roles and call center roles, like you say. I mean, McKinsey, the McKinseys of the world were, big employers of relatively, high end, well paying, entry level jobs. Even in the medical field, the American Medical Association said that the amount of physicians they surveyed using AI in their daily work is up to 66%. That's doubled in the last year. So the medical industry as well, right? I can't, it's hard to find a space where it's not, infiltrating in one way or another.
Well, and I think some of this too is, it's a digital transformation hangover from about 10 years ago. Everybody 10 years ago was talking digital transformation, and we talk about this all the time. Very few people actually did it. And I think that chicken's finally coming home to roost, I think, a little bit, where we're starting to actually get to the point where we're being forced to be transformative. And so the transformation is actually happening. I think that a lot of people are potentially going to be overcorrecting. And you already hear some stories where people are like, oh gosh, we have to hire back a bunch of people that we let go because the automation wasn't quite what we thought it was. So again, turbulence, disruption. I think we're going to see a lot of that. I downplay a lot the AI revolution that we're supposedly in. I think this is going to be pretty substantial. It's not in the ways that it's being largely articulated. I think it's going to be a lot softer and so forth, but it's still going to be very disruptive, as we're seeing all around us.
So let's get to our main topic, which is this executive order. It's U.S. Executive Order 14179. We talked about this, kind of a little bit a few weeks ago, Chris, but I thought it would be kind of worth, revisiting and diving a little deeper on it because, I can count on, I was going to say one hand. I think I can count on one finger how many times the government, at least the U.S. government, has come out with an executive order that impacted the technology space this directly. Even some of the outsourcing stuff from years ago with the visa rules and stuff like that. A lot of that was kind of political. Some of it did happen, but it wasn't what they talked about. I mean, this is an executive order. And the other part of it is that, part of the, I believe, some of the intention behind the executive order is also in this tax bill, which we reported on a couple of weeks ago as well. That the government, the House is trying to push through. So maybe you could kind of take us through, what first of all, what does this executive order say, and what are some of the ramifications of this?
Just to paraphrase, in the prior administration under Biden, there were executive orders put in place that were, the intent of those was, okay, the government is going to start adopting AI and start acknowledging AI as a new technology, but it was written in such a way to be very guarded, right? You needed to hire a CAIO in your department of the federal government so that you could start assessing the impact of the tool. And it was a very protective kind of approach it was taking, right? Don't go too far, don't replace too much, don't adopt too fast, be careful. And then when the language of the new one coming out of the Trump administration is the polar opposite. It's like Mr. Burns in The Simpsons saying, "Release the hounds," right? Just, we're going to go great guns. And it leads to all kinds of speculation as to, is it just doing the opposite for the sake of doing the opposite, or is there like some kind of massive conspiracy, like AI is already taken over and now we're on the defensive? Is it a recognition of competitive advantage in international trade, which there's arguments for that? China coming out with DeepSeek, which is basically, OpenAI stole the internet and DeepSeek stole OpenAI. So if there's a recognition that we're in a technological race and technology is the thing that makes you a global superpower or not, there's a recognition, I think, that this was a vulnerability and that we had to get in front of it. And that also, in terms of keeping the engine of the economy going, you've heard me say it over and over again, I'm very skeptical of AI's economic impact. But if we need to continue to achieve growth, and our population is declining rapidly, we better find another source of that kind of economic growth. And so I think this is also sort of the Eisenhower superhighway system after World War II, right? This is the infrastructure of our age, building up AI capabilities. So I think there's a number of those sorts of factors in there, and that's it's good in that it's hopefully going to push us forward. Let's just hope we're putting the investments where they make the most sense. And I say, as we're turning back on through Mile Island, which was a huge nuclear failure, let's hope we're still maintaining some safeguards as we push this technology forward.
Yeah, aside from just the share that what I would add to what you said is, for the federal government to say, hey, we want you to not only adopt technology, but we want you to adopt this. I don't want to say untested technology, but there's definitely challenges. I think part of the concern here is, in our headline, right? Are we really unshackling productivity and efficiency that the government really, really needs, or are we just unleashing unregulated chaos? So there's this debate about always, right, with regulation, and we've talked about it a million times on the show. I'm always sort of at the somewhere in the middle of the need to regulate this stuff, but not curb innovation and things. But for the government to come out and say, not only do we want you to do this, but we every department has to use AI, has to prioritize AI technology, has to prioritize contractors that are using AI, needs to appoint a head of AI. Huge, right? I mean, huge ramifications. And the other part of it is that, one of the things I like about it as a marketer by trade, is, in theory, it gives companies that maybe aren't already doing business with the federal government the opportunity to differentiate themselves on a technology, on AI, in contracts that maybe they had no shot at getting, right? For a while, the only way to get a government contract, if you weren't one of the established incumbents, was to be like a minority owned. That was a big trend for a while, and every company was minority owned for a while. Then the DEI stuff more recently. But here's an opportunity, like regardless how you feel about those types of initiatives, here's an opportunity to legitimately say, hey, Mr. CEO of AI company, you have a shot at a government contract now because your technology is different and better than the next guys.
Yeah, we've gone from minority owned preference to AI owned preference, right? A great example of that is Anduril, the defense company. So the Air Force is they're coming with their F-47, their new super advanced fighter, and that fighter is designed to be piloted sometimes and sometimes not, but also to fly in formation with high performance drones that are AI operated. Anduril is a startup company that came out of nowhere, and they got one of the contracts for those co-pilots, the wingmen. And I just saw, I think it was 2 weeks ago, they released the hardware, the actual flying plane that they had. So some rando little startup in Ohio is now an AI weapons manufacturer, to your point. And no one in the military or in the defense industrial complex had any belief that they were going to make it, right? Because they're up against Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman and these other trillion-dollar companies. So I think right there, you're absolutely right. It's opening up a great deal of innovation, And having worked for a lot of the big companies myself, they lose the ability to do that innovation. They're too busy, having meetings, right? So to open that door for some of the innovators to actually get that kind of funding and push and I think we look at the attacks in Russia just a couple of days ago. Warfare itself has completely changed, utterly changed. I mean, that was, the attack was horrifying and really scary, but it was incredibly innovative. So we're in that kind of time frame, and everybody needs to be thinking differently. Ironically, there too, that drone attacky kind of thing is at the end of my book from 2015. So a lot of this stuff is predictable, but to see it in real life and the implications is pretty scary.
So for those of us that thought this was very prolific and very exciting, then you kind of couple this with the other headline that came out last month, which is that the House Republicans, who are trying to put together this what is he called, the big beautiful tax bill,
the bill to end all bills.
the bill right. And again, politics aside, you put in this bill, kind of shoved into this bill, a stipulation that if the states want their rebates or their tax breaks, federal funding and things like that, that they have to agree not to regulate AI for the next 10 years. So now all of a sudden, I don't know about you, man, I went from this is a great idea to this is a little scary, right? Why does the federal government not want the states to, regulate for the next 10 years? Is it just, like you say, kind of open capitalism? Is it a control grab? What do you think?
Things that make you go, right? Usually with these bills that come through the federal government, whatever they name it, what they're intending to do is the exact opposite, right? So the Inflation Reduction Act that increased inflation and whatnot. So yeah, I'm just a tiny bit skeptical if they're telling, and we are a federal republic, right? States are supposed to have rights and the ability to self-regulate a little bit. So when you're saying, we're cutting off the money spigot unless you give up those constitutional rights, it's literally in the Bill of Rights. Those powers not given to the federal government specifically fall to the states, and now you're saying, all right, we want you to waive those rights. That generally should give you a moment of pause, right? Whenever someone's asking me, it's like going to a theme park that just had 5 people die on one of the rides, and they ask you to sign the waiver that we're not going to hold you responsible. It feels a little bit like that. So yeah, I'm not getting a warm fuzzy over some of the things in the big beautiful bill, right?
Aside from the debate over states' rights versus federal government rights, which is obviously a constitutional law discussion for a different show, but I just wonder, is it well, maybe you're right. Maybe it is a power play, right? Or is it just that this is a philosophy, a mandate that the government wants to implement and just not get interference and bogged down with, a million lawsuits, which is what's going to happen anyway. Interestingly enough, this letter went out yesterday from a bunch of state lawmakers, fighting this bill. And interestingly, it seems like it's actually bipartisan, because it's always interesting when something's actually bipartisan in Washington, right? That half of these lawmakers are actually Republicans that are pushing back on it. So maybe you're right. Maybe it's more of a power play thing. I just wonder if this has. I mean, it does, right? It has bigger implications on this bigger conversation around how open and free market do we want AI to be, right?
I think there's arguments on both sides. One is the power play sort of thing, and the other is let's get out of the way of innovation. I mean, the same is happening in cryptocurrency, right? In the span of about a year, we've gone from shutting down pretty much everything but Bitcoin. The crypto industry was like in its death throes. central banking digital currencies were going to take over, right? So we were going to issue them out of the Federal Reserve and so forth. And now we're on the verge of deregulating cryptocurrency. The federal government's setting up a Bitcoin reserve, as are the states, as are multiple other countries. It's like, whoa, what just happened? So in as much as cryptocurrency was a very disruptive technology that threatened the very fundamentals of our society for the last 250 years, there's a point at which you can't fight it anymore, right? Which again is the basis of my upcoming book. It's all right, we tried to stop this innovation. We couldn't really stop it. We tried our best. All right, now let's just open the gates and let it happen. So I feel there's a little bit of that going on. The wanting to control the degree of change that was coming because it was disruptive has played its course, and now you're not going to stop it any longer. So now let's kind of go with the flow and see where it takes us. I get a real sense politically, culturally, and economically, that's where we are finally.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to play the other side, right, as a sales and marketing guy by trade, if I'm working for a technology vendor who's doing AI, one of the things that scares the heck out of me if I'm investing a boatload of money is, one government says yes, another government says. I mean, you have that already in global organizations where you need an entire team of people to adjust your products, your marketing, your messaging, your marketing strategy based on the data requirements in the EU versus the data requirements in California versus the data requirements in the other 49 US states. But if every state has its own regulations, then it's going to be tough. And so I do see the merit, the federal government saying, hey, this is a federal thing. If I remember my constitutional law class, you're the practicing former practicing attorney, but if I remember my constitutional law class, I think it was like interstate commerce clause, right, where the states couldn't impact national trade, right, by implementing restrictive state laws, right, on roads. Maybe it's the same kind of thing, right, where you say, hey, whether you agree with or not with the way the federal government's handling it, maybe it does need to be at a national scale, because I don't want to develop products and find out I can't sell them in California or Oregon and certain states, right?
Well, and it's not unlike, say, nuclear power, right? When we kind of invented nuclear power, both for weapons and for energy, every state could have stepped in and said, I want to regulate this, and the federal government said, over my dead body. And it's, for better or for worse, it allowed the technology to be deployed. And so I don't think there's an absence of historical precedent. It's just happening really quickly. But I would actually use this historic, look back at nuclear power within just a couple of years of it being discovered. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, federal government controlled it. States were out of it for the most part. And so I think there is a historical precedent, just not in your and my lifetime. It was our grandparents' lifetime or parents' lifetime.
Yeah. And it gets back to the debate we've had 1,000, who should regulate and govern, right? I mean, even Sam Altman, OpenAI has stressed the need for, regulatory frameworks. And I think the other problem,
now that he has his own $1 billion underground bunker, he wants to regulate it, right?
Now he's like slow everybody else down, right?
Yeah, he's got an escape route down underground in New Zealand, right? He's pulling a Lord of the Rings escape. Now we'll regulate it.
now regulate it so my competitors can't catch up with me, right?
Yeah.
But that's the thing, right? So do you want something that is completely open, I guess you have to find the happy medium. I've always been, I think I said back in the Biden days when those regulations were coming out, I think I was kind of on the other side of the coin where I was like, let's not overregulate this. I mean, there's a bunch of old guys in Washington that know nothing about AI, know nothing about technology, that are just going to kill. I think I even said on one of these shows, if AI dies, it's going to be because of Washington. That was before the Trump administration, right? But it was like, do we really want to get a bunch of guys? These are the same people that couldn't define a bot during the Ticketmaster conversation hearing, didn't know how to question Zuckerberg during the Facebook here, right? And we're going to let these guys regulate this stuff. Now they're leading in it. But I think maybe Altman's point is, you know, we need transparency, right? We need to know what's going to happen. We need to avoid, and I would agree, my words, not his, but, you know, you can almost adjust to any policy. It's the constant changing. It's Google, buying DoubleClick and passing regulators, and then years later, the government retroactively coming back after them and saying, no, you shouldn't have done that. Well, whatever. I invested 10 years and how many billions of dollars into this. That certainty, I think, is what business needs, regardless of what it is. Just like the stock market, right? Certainty of any kind is better than uncertainty.
So you really just catalyzed my thinking on this just in the last 90 seconds. But I think the parallel to nuclear power and also the parallel to space technology, rocketry, and that's in that same World War II-ish time frame. But both those were perceived to be such a disruption to the balance of power and how power was managed in the world. So I think the implication here is that AI is like the next Cold War space race, nuclear race kind of thing. It's the next technology that gives nations strategic advantage or disadvantage, and will be a defining characteristic of a superpower in the future. So that's and the sequencing. Well, the government's like, I'm not so sure we should be doing this. To damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, let's go. That's pretty much how it went with both the space race and with nuclear power. So that, great. Now I got a couple articles to write. Thank you. No, I think there's something there. I think that the view that this technology is so imperative and such a strategic disruptor that we must be on the front line of that is potentially the impetus behind doing this. I don't know.
Well, and the other reason why I've changed a little bit on my feeling about government managing it, regulating it, is because it has, as we talked about at the top of the show, it has workforce ramifications, right? So at some point, the government is going to have an answer for this, what I think will become a growing chasm between the jobs that are needed and the people that are out there. And at some point, it becomes, forget the people that are unemployable. We don't even need the people that are employable anymore, or not as many of them. And so what do we do? How does that affect social programs? How does that affect, government programs, government employees, but even beyond that, just the general workforce. And I think, the good news is that, this may be the first, I mean, they haven't explicitly said this, but this may be the first time in a while where, I feel like the government may be in reality as to what the workforce ramifications are of the policies. But then they're trying to bring manufacturing back too. So I don't know.
It's a little bit of a tangent, but yesterday I was watching this special on the history of Rhodesia becoming Zimbabwe. Kind of random, I know, but they showed $100 trillion Zimbabwe rand note. And the country was undergoing on the order of 100,000% inflation year over year. And that was based upon some policy. They wanted more equity. They took a lot of the land away from the white farmers that had settled there, giving it to the rest, trying to get equity, and it completely wiped the country out. And now they're actually trying to convince all those people that they all the white settlers that they kicked out to come back to try to turn the agriculture industry back on. So, be careful what you wish for. And some of these, what may seem like a very benign or even beneficial policy can have dramatically outsized implications. Just think through what happens if something goes wrong. As I point that out all the time. You help us get to Mars. I'll make sure we don't blow up along the way.
Funny. Well, good conversation, Chris. As always, we're actually off again next week, but the following week we have some really special guests. I'm not going to disclose yet who it is, but a couple very senior former executives from some some companies you would know going to be on the show week after next. So look out for that announcement. Excited for that show. It'll be a good one. In the meantime, if there's anything that we can help you with, please reach out, IRPAai.org. We've got a bunch of subject matter experts, analysts, and various different programs to help you reach your customers if you're on the vendor side. If you're on the buy side looking for help, advice, recommendations, we are here to help. Just go to IRPAai.org. Chris, have a great week, buddy.
Excellent.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
See you.